Hello. Welcome to episode 180 of Prose. This week, meet an assassin in a brothel and revel in her scars. I hope everyone will get excited for this one. The story this week comes from a first-time contributor, one Mr. Brandon Nolan. Mr. Nolan is a longtime friend and a wonderful, wonderful supporter of the show. I'm looking forward to hearing all the inevitable praise that will come after you all hear this story. As always, please go follow the show on social media under @ProsePodcast across all the various platforms. Even more amazing would be if you could go leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast catcher. These ratings and reviews, they really truly do help, and honestly, they help me know how to get better. For easiest access to the show, subscribe using Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or whatever podcast catcher is your favorite. And lastly, please do check out the Prose Patreon page at patreon.com/prosepodcast. And do consider supporting the show there. Not only will I be eternally grateful, not only will you be part of an elite, wonderful Prose family, you'll get some swag out of the deal. Alright, that's enough business. Thanks for listening. Let's get to the tale, shall we? This week we have Red Saint by Brandon Nolan. Enjoy. Red Saint, an original short story by Brandon Nolan. Leah leaned back on the couch and closed her eyes, tuning out the sighs and moans coming from the other rooms in the brothel. The Silken Strand was not her first choice for a meeting location, but it was at her client's request, and it actually suited her needs as well. Hiring the legendary assassin Red Saint was nearly impossible. A personal audience was out of the question. But when Simon Gilreath, Baron of the Iron Giants, made a personal request, she couldn't turn it down. Leah tugged at the short satin robe, trying to give herself at least a small amount of modesty. The outfit probably wasn't necessary, but some long ago part of her enjoyed the theatrics. It was a sharp blue, like a cloudless winter sky, and it matched her eyes. She gave up on the gown and let her hands slowly wander, tracing a familiar path across countless scars. Each scar told a story of a kill, and her fingers lingered on each as she remembered. A thin, neat pink line ran down her left bicep and spiraled around her forearm. That one came from the Witch of Cantor's razor. 3 ragged tears across her lower back. Those came from the lioness she set upon the cruel Duke Wynn's estate. On her right shoulder, just below the collarbone, flared a puckered hole where the old king's pistol had sent a steel ball, and an angry gash ran just above her left knee from when the new king had invited her to dinner. Each scar told a story, some long ago and some from far-off lands. Each scar told of a time of trouble where she had been sought out as a solution. From the beginning, her kills had been public, each target painted crimson with the sinner's mark in her own blood, and from there the legend took wings of its own. Leah couldn't remember where the name Red Saint came from, but it raced across the countryside like wildfire. You could walk into any inn in Tehran and hear a dozen stories of the infamous Red Saint, each more ridiculous than the last, and each of those closer to the truth. In the smaller towns, she was a ghost thirsty for blood. In the cities, she was an eldritch aberration. In the churches, she was a demon, and among the hovels and the slums, she was the angel of vengeance. Scars and memories flooded through Leah's mind. She had taken 100 names and worn 100 faces. The legend of Red Saint seemed immortal, but Leah was getting older. Her body had been battered and bruised and cut open with each job, and it was beginning to protest. Her rapier was starting to dip on the parry, and her gun hand shook in the mornings. Leah wondered yet again if it was time to retire. Finally, her fingers came to a stop on her stomach, where hundreds of tiny old scars crisscrossed from below her navel to right underneath her breasts. Her breath caught. Even after all those years, the memories refused to fade. The pain and the fear threatened to return before Leah forced herself calm. Some scars don't deserve a story. A soft rap on the door broke Leah from her reverie. The door cracked, and she waved the girl in. "Is he here, Addie?" "Hallie is bringing him up now," Addie replied. She fidgeted with the hem of her robe. "He's drunk." Leah sighed. "Of course he is. He is a merchant baron after all. Well, nothing to be done about it now." She looked up as Hallie led the man into the room. "Ah, Baron Gilriath, it is so good to finally meet you." Simon Gilriath eyed Leah as Hallie and Addie trimmed the lantern wicks in the room. As they passed him to leave, his hand slipped up Addie's robe and gave her a hard pinch. He smirked as she yelped and hurried out, shutting the door behind her. Gilriath turned to Leah and took a few silent moments lustily appraising her, and Leah spent the time avoiding his eyes and studied him. He was in his 50s, still fit, but his belly was slowly losing the fight to heavy rich meals and heavier drink. His once dark hair was almost fully silvered, and his dark eyes squinted without his spectacles. The wine flushed Gilriath's cheeks, and he grunted as he sat on the couch opposite Leah. "You're a bit old for me, but you have a he burped, "dangerous beauty about you. I suppose you will do for now. It's hard to find even a penny whore who isn't scared of me in this damned place." He began unlacing his breeches. "Well, are you just going to sit there?" "Oh, I'm not here for that, Baron Gilriath," said Leah, crossing her arms. "My job is to meet you here. I am your contact." Gilriath chuckled. "You expect me to believe the infamous Red Saint sent a washed-up whore to meet someone like me? He would know better. I came to offer him a small kingdom's worth in gold for his services, and you expect me to believe he wouldn't show." Leah reached into her robe and pulled out a rolled-up parchment from her robe, tied with a crimson ribbon, and she tossed it into Baron Gilriath's lap. "Your contract." Gilriath took a pair of wire spectacles from his vest pocket and read slowly. After a moment, he looked up, still squinting. "I see no signature or seal on this." "The contract terms are incomplete, my lord." "He sent you to negotiate with me?" The merchant baron growled. His face flushed further and his cheeks began to purple with anger. "He dares?" "If you find the contract unacceptable, then I will take my leave," sighed Leah, holding her hand out to Baron Gilriath. "Now, hold on. Gilriath gripped the contract in his hand. "Fine," he grumped. "What are your terms?" "Tell me, why does the highest of merchant barons seek the death of the Duke of Rylon?" Leah asked. Gilriath grunted. "Isn't it obvious?" Leah stretched her legs out and swung them onto the couch, showing a scandalous amount of thigh. "No," she said, noting the lust in Gilriath's eyes. She nearly yawned. "Enlighten me." Gilreath growled again, still appraising her legs. His eyes narrowed when he noticed the scars, but he did not mention them. "Look, princess," he snapped. "I'm not here to play games with you. I don't care who you are." Leah clapped once and the door opened as Hallie and Adie glided into the room. Hallie shut the door behind them and they both shrugged off their robes and moved to Gilreath's side of the room. Hallie knelt in front of him and removed his boots and began to massage his feet and calves, slowly moving upward. Adie moved behind the couch and moved her hands beneath his shirt to massage his shoulder. He admired their nakedness for a moment before turning his attention back to Leah. "Now, that's more like it," he grinned. "Care to join in? It seems I'm not going anywhere for a while now." Leah's mouth curved into a half-smile. "Perhaps, but first..." Oh yes." Gilreath leaned his head back and closed his eyes. "How much do you know of the Iron Giants?" Leah shrugged. "Depends on who you ask. Engineers say they are a marvelous harmony of steam and iron that sail on the rails you have built across the kingdom. The nobles consider them a nuisance, but ride the gilded cars like they own them. The farmers marvel that their crop can sell fresh in the cities hundreds of miles away. And on the outskirts, where there are no rails, the folk there say they want no part in your rails, but their voices betray their curiosity." Gilreath opened an eye. "Fair put, but any waif on the street can tell you that." "I wasn't finished," said Leah. 15 years ago, you met a young engineer with big ideas, and you bought up his workshop. For a year you laid track, buying up land in great narrow strips across Tehran and Rylon, out to all the central duchies, and iron by the cartload. It was not long before your first Iron Giant made its maiden voyage from Rylon to Westreach. You were a hero overnight. Now you own a dozen giants, each one working tirelessly across much of the kingdom. You bought yourself a barony and now rank the highest man in the kingdom without being noble-born." Gilreath nodded. "Baronetcy, actually," he said. "I can't go any further without direct help from the crown. They call me Baron because I took that name long before I bought my title. In truth, I'm barely more than a gilded knight. That's where you come in." Gilreath chuckled at a look of feigned confusion from Leah. "Oh, come now, Leah. You think I don't know who you are? You're good at hiding, I'll give you that, but money speaks volumes. Cost me a minor fortune, but it always talks." Leah frowned. "Well, that is unexpected," she said. "But no matter. So Baronet Gilreath, how does killing the highest-ranking duke in Tehran give you noble blood?" "Willard Royce," replied Gilreath suddenly, "Duke of Rylon. He's a prince in his own right and 2 steps from the crown. He's the nephew of the old king, cousin to the new. He's a champion of the lance and sword, a champion of the people." He spread his arms wide. "The damn pox-ridden son of a whore." Gilreath stood suddenly and whipped the back of his hand into Adie's face. "Damn it, whore!" he screamed. "Put some goddamn effort into it!" Adie cried out and spun from the blow, falling behind the couch. Gilreath stood, his fists clenched and eyes blazing with anger. Adie sobbed quietly behind the couch. Gilreath pointed at Leah. "Enough games, assassin." He reached into his vest and tossed a bag onto the floor. It landed with a heavy clink. 100 royals, my final payment. Take it and do what you've been paid to do, and send me a girl that is worth the silver she charges. This mess has me all tense now." Gilreath shoved Hallie away from his feet and sat heavily back down on his couch. Leah sighed and nodded to Hallie. She bent and retrieved the heavy bag, and then moved behind the couch and gingerly helped Adie to her feet. After Hallie led the girl out of the room, Leah rose from the couch and crossed the room to stand in front of Gilreath. She untied the blue silk cord that held her robe closed and shrugged the smooth satin off her shoulders, exposing herself to him. Gilreath grinned lustily, and his rough hands grabbed at her and pulled her onto his lap. He leaned forward and suddenly bit Leah just above the collarbone. She cried out in pain as his teeth sank in. Blood began trickling down her chest. "I made the legend bleed," he growled. "I always mark what I want." Leah leaned forward and whispered in his ear, "So do I," and with a quick, fluid motion spun the silk cord around his neck, once, twice. She pulled it tight and slipped both ends into metal clasps on the back of the couch. They were her own design. Already tight, every move Gilreath made would cause the cord to cinch more. His own struggling would kill him. The move stunned Gilreath for half a second, and Leah sprang away from him as he tried to reach her. He tried yelling, but the cord was already blocking air. His eyes bulged and his face went from a flushed pink to a deep crimson. His mouth gaped, trying to pull a breath as the cord slowly crushed his throat. Leah sat back down across from him, closing her robe and crossing her legs, relaxed. She watched horror slowly spread across his purpling face. His mouth was moving. "Why?" it screamed soundlessly. Leah smiled. "You beat your women," she said. "Not just your whores. You work men to death to build your rails. They're lane with blood. You tried to fool an assassin." She grinned broadly. "But mostly your money keeps no secrets, fool. Duke Royce paid me first." Gilreath's body spasmed and he thrashed violently. And he pulled at the cord helplessly. Leah watched his struggles continue, weakening until the vessels in his bulged eyes burst and his face darkened beyond violet. She counted to 100 after he quit moving and walked back across to stand in front of him. She kneeled on the couch next to him and dug her fingers into the wound above her collarbone, causing the blood to drip more. Slowly, with a practiced precision, she used her fingernails to trace an intricate ancient rune on Gilreath's forehead. A square with concave edges pierced by an 8-pointed star. Inside the square, a crescent broken by 3 hashes. Sinner. Leah finished her mark and methodically detached the silk cord. She tied up her robe and opened the door. Hallie and Addie stood just outside. Addie's right cheek was already swollen and half of her face was nearly purple. Likely her jaw was fractured. "Ma'am?" Hallie asked. "Call Elijah. Tell him when he's finished with his fun upstairs, he's to make a delivery. Bench in front of the rail station before dawn. Oh, and no trousers. Let the rumor mongers have fun with that." Leah turned to Addie and wiped a tear from the girl's swollen eye. "In the morning, go find Carl at the leatherworker's shop, by the old mill, Riverside. Upstairs lives a man named Morgan. He will take care of that jaw." Addie nodded and Leah turned back to Hallie. "My clothes?" she asked. Hallie pointed down the hall. "In the closet downstairs, ma'am," she said. Leah nodded and turned. As she walked down the hall, Hallie called after her, "Ma'am?" Leah stopped and looked back. Hallie held the bulging leather sack and gave it a quick shake. The gold inside clinked cheerfully. "Your gold." "You two split it," said Leah, as she descended the stairway. Minutes later, Leah exited the silken strand and took a deep breath of the night's cool air. Fog was rolling in from the river, slowly smothering the smooth violet glow of the night lamps. The night was quiet, and the streets were empty. Leah adjusted the belt and held her pistol in repair, and she began walking. She was in no hurry and had no particular place to go. As she walked, her fingers traced the bandage around her shoulder. Of course, it needed stitches, and of course she wouldn't get them. Every scar has a story. Her mind and her feet wandered, and eventually her thoughts returned to business. Maybe it was time to retire. Thank you for listening to Red Saint by first-time contributor Brandon Nolan. Brandon Nolan lives in Northwest Arkansas with his wife and 2 boys and a daughter on the way. When he is not doing his best Toby Flinderson impression for his day job, he is spending time with his family and playing video games, and scratching out a pretty bang-up fantasy story or 2 when he can. A very hearty thank you to Mr. Nolan for today's story, and a very sincere apology at any names mispronounced in Red Saint, a fantastic story with an imperfect reader. All sounds you are hearing come from YouTube's audio library that offers free tracks for creators to make use of in their creations. All the music you hear is being used under CC 1.0 public domain dedication licenses. That'll do it this week for Prose. Yes, indeed, we're a one-story wonder this week. I certainly hope you enjoyed Mr. Nolan's first story. There is another coming in the very near future, and a much longer one at that. We will be back in 2 weeks' time with our next episode, and until then, I certainly hope that you'll love those around you, tell them that you do, and embrace this life as it is stranger than fiction. Thank you for listening. See you next time.